A criminal, desperate and cornered, pointed to his snarling dog and shouted the unthinkable, "Attack the officer." But what happened in the next few seconds stunned everyone watching. This wasn't just a fight, it was a shocking twist. No one expected. Officer Daniels adjusted his patrol cap, the familiar weight of his badge glinting in the light. To him, it was just another shift, a quiet neighborhood, the usual hum of traffic, and the occasional passerby nodding politely. Everything felt routine, safe, almost uneventful. But as he turned down a narrow alley, something made him slow his pace. The atmosphere shifted. A broken bottle crunched under his boot, and from the shadows, he caught sight of a man lingering too long near a parked van. The man's eyes darted quickly, scanning his surroundings, and a large dog strained against the leash in his hand. Daniel's instincts prickled. This wasn't just an innocent bystander that he stepped closer, his voice firm but calm. "Sir, can I ask what you're doing here?" The man stiffened, tightening his grip on the leash. The dog growled low, ears pinned back, muscles tense. What had started as a routine patrol was about to become something far more dangerous. The man stepped forward, his movements sharp and defensive. His jaw clenched as he positioned himself between the officer and the van. The dog at his side pulled against the leash, its teeth bared, a guttural snarl rumbling in its chest. Daniels raised a hand, trying to project calm, but his senses screamed that this was no ordinary encounter. "Easy there," the officer said steadily, eyes shifting between the man and the animal. But the suspect's expression hardened into something colder. "Back off," he hissed, tugging the leash tighter. The shepherd's claws scraped against the concrete, the sound piercing in the silence of the alley. Fear mingled with defiance in the suspect's eyes, and Daniels knew he was dealing with someone unpredictable. That a small crowd began to gather at the edge of the street, whispers carrying through the air. Some lifted phones, recording as tension thickened. The suspect sneered, glancing at the bystanders before locking eyes with Daniels. "You think you're in control here?" he spat. His grip on the leash tightened. Danger was no longer a possibility. It was imminent. The alley fell into a chilling silence, broken only by the dog's growls echoing off the walls. The man's eyes darted wildly, the weight of being cornered pressing in. His voice cracked into a furious shout as he yanked the leash forward. "Get him!" he barked, the words slicing through the air like a whip. The dog lunged, muscles coiled with raw power, teeth flashing in the light. Gasps rippled through the crowd, some screaming, others stumbling backward in panic. Officer Daniels braced himself, his heart pounding against his ribs. He had faced danger before, but never like this, never with a weapon that breathed and snarled, one driven not by metal but by instinct. Every second stretched into an eternity. The shepherd's paws scraped the ground as it surged forward, its handler egging it on with a desperate, "Do it." Daniels raised his hands defensively, ready for the inevitable impact. The onlookers held their breath, convinced they were about to witness a brutal attack. But in that razor-thin moment, something extraordinary began to unfold. The shepherd closed the distance in a blur, his jaws opening wide as the crowd cried out in horror. Officer Daniels tensed, bracing for the searing bite. But just inches away, the dog skidded to a halt. His ears twitched, his growls faltered, and for a split second, his amber eyes locked with the officer's. In that moment, something shifted, confusion rippled through the alley. The criminal yanked violently on the leash, screaming, "Attack him! Do it!" But the shepherd resisted, muscles trembling under the pull. Instead of lunging at the officer, he spun his head back toward his handler, lips curling into a deeper, more menacing snarl. The dog's instincts warred against the command, loyalty clashing with the truth his senses couldn't ignore. The onlookers gasped as realization dawned. The animal wasn't confused. He was choosing. The leash snapped taut, then slipped from the man's grip as the shepherd broke free, teeth bared, not at the officer, but at the very man who had tried to weaponize him. The crowd stood frozen, watching loyalty rewrite itself in a heartbeat. The shepherd lunged, not at the officer, but at the criminal. The man's eyes widened in disbelief as his own dog snapped the leash free and spun on him. Teeth clamped against his sleeve, ripping fabric as the man stumbled backward, shouting in terror. Gasps and cries erupted from the crowd as the scene flipped in an instant. Officer Daniels didn't hesitate. Years of training surged to the surface as he rushed forward, using the dog's distraction to his advantage. In one swift motion, he forced the criminal against the van, securing his wrists with cold steel cuffs. The man fought, cursing and thrashing, but his strength was no match for the combined force of the officer and the animal he had once tried to command. The alley filled with chaos, sirens blaring in the distance, bystanders cheering, some even crying at the turn of events. The shepherd released his grip, stepping back to stand beside Daniels, chest heaving, eyes sharp. What was meant to be an attack had become a rescue, and the entire town had just witnessed it unfold. The criminal was dragged away in handcuffs. The shepherd stood trembling, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. For a moment, silence fell over the alley. Officer Daniels slowly crouched down, extending a hand, not with commands or force, but with calm reassurance. The dog's ears twitched, his growl softening into a low whine. The crowd watched as Daniels whispered gently, "You did the right thing, boy." His fingers brushed against the dog's muzzle, and instead of pulling away, the shepherd leaned into the touch. The officer could feel the tension melt from the animal's body, years of fear and harsh training giving way to something new. Trust. Tears welled in the eyes of bystanders. What had begun as a terrifying order to attack had transformed into a bond between protector and protector. The shepherd pressed closer to Daniels, his tail giving a hesitant wag, as though he finally understood he wasn't a weapon anymore. He was safe. For the first time, the dog had chosen love over fear. By nightfall, the story had already spread across the city. News crews replayed shaky cell phone footage of the tense standoff, the criminal's order, the lunging dog, and the shocking twist when the shepherd turned on his master. Viewers watched in disbelief, their hearts pounding as if they had been there themselves. The local station, reporters gathered, microphones flashing as officers praised the dog's courage. Parents stopped by with their children, pointing at the shepherd with wide eyes. "That's the one," they whispered. "That's the dog who saved an officer." Applause filled the air when Daniel stepped out, the shepherd at his side, calm but watchful. Social media erupted with hashtags calling the animal a hero. Strangers offered donations. Shelters shared his story as proof of why second chances mattered. But beyond the headlines and the cheers, the moment carried something deeper. A community realizing that loyalty, even in the unlikeliest of places, had the power to stop evil in its tracks. The shepherd had become more than a dog. He was now a symbol of hope. In the days that followed, the shepherd was placed in the care of the department's K9 unit. Trainers examined him carefully, expecting a dog broken by years of fear and harsh commands. Instead, they found an animal eager to learn, his tail wagging each time he was spoken to kindly. It was as though he had been waiting all along for someone to show him a different way. Officer Daniels visited daily, bringing treats and offering quiet words of encouragement. Each session, the bond between them deepened. What had begun as an alleyway standoff was becoming a partnership built on trust and respect. The shepherd, once forced to be a weapon, was finally learning what it meant to protect by choice. A small ceremony weeks later, the community gathered once more. The criminal was long gone, but the dog remained, this time proudly wearing the vest of a trainee K9. Daniels knelt beside him, whispering, "Welcome to the team." And as the shepherd barked joyfully, the crowd erupted in cheers. A dark chapter had ended, and a new story had begun.